Meghan Markle has never been a member. I don't know if she's become a member now, but she had been working for Soho House since at least 2005.
Meghan Markle calls it destiny. Everyone else calls it networking with a royal twist, because fairy tales usually don't start with a Soho House membership card.
She didn't buy a membership. She was a working girl for Soho House.
Prince Harry thought he knew every chapter of Meghan's story until he saw one photograph.
When she started on Suits and she befriended Jessica Mulroney, her status changed.
A faded yacht image buried deep online.
She was one of my Deal or No Deal girls that were, she was a caddy for all of my celebrities.
The sunlight, the laughter, the champagne, and in the corner, something small, almost invisible.
But in the end, nothing beats the truth, the real fact.
A navy blue canvas bag, stamped with the emblem of Soho House. It meant nothing to most people, but to Harry, it was a name that carried whispers, history, and warning.
Prince Andrew, have you noticed how he completely avoids looking at Meghan Markle when she's around him or when she was around him?
Because Soho House wasn't just another private club, it was a gateway, one that connected actresses to billionaires, models to politicians, and rising stars to royalty.
So when Meghan came along into the scene, I just thought, this is fascinating. How is this going to play out?
And suddenly, the timeline of Meghan's story didn't add up. The media told us it was a fairy tale. An actress meets a prince by chance. Love conquers the odds. Tradition bends to modernity. But what if that's not how it happened? What if the meeting wasn't chance at all, but design? Because that single photo, the bag, the yacht, the friends who never appeared in interviews, opened a door to something Harry was never meant to find. A network of introductions, a map of names, a pattern too precise to ignore. From Istanbul to London to Toronto, every city revealed another connection. Every connection led back to the same inner circle and the same man pulling the strings.
So Jessica Mulroney introduced her to Marcus Anderson in Toronto.
Marcus Anderson. Now, Harry isn't just questioning his marriage. He's questioning the origin story itself. Because when you realize your fairy tale might have been a strategy, love stops feeling like destiny and starts feeling like a setup.
And I don't think he heard Meghan's voice. I think he heard his mother's voice.
It began quietly, a private search, late at night, inside the walls of Frogmore Cottage. Harry wasn't looking for trouble. He was looking for truth. Dozens of old photos spread across his desk. Tabloids, archived Instagram shots, fragments from Meghan's years before the palace. But what caught his attention wasn't the smiles or the locations. It was the pattern. In nearly every photo, one logo kept reappearing. A champagne glass etched with the same crest. A velvet invitation embossed with the same initials.
This gentleman right here, that's Nick Jones, the original founder of Soho House. Guess where he's going there? He's arriving at Meghan Markle and Harry's wedding as guest of honor. Oh yeah, Soho was present there.
Soho House International. To the public, it was an exclusive club where celebrities escaped cameras and executives closed quiet deals. But inside London's social circles, its reputation ran deeper. It was where introductions were arranged, careers curated, reputations constructed. And at the center of it all was a man Harry had met only briefly, Marcus Anderson. Anderson wasn't a stranger to Meghan. He'd been in her orbit for years. Her confidant, travel companion, and the man insiders quietly called her social strategist. According to archived society blogs and event registries, Marcus was the invisible thread connecting Meghan to power players across Europe and North America. Each new discovery made Harry's pulse quicken. The yacht wasn't random, the parties weren't spontaneous, the friendships weren't accidental, they were curated, perfectly aligned to lead her into his world.
Jeffrey Epstein was also Harvey Weinstein, very prominent. There were members. Meghan Markle was just one of the working girls for Soho House. Call girl, working girl, escort, whatever you want to call it. That's what she was.
And as the clock ticked past midnight, Harry realized something far more unsettling. The same names funding his charities were the same faces smiling beside Meghan in those forgotten photos. That wasn't coincidence. That was architecture. And it was about to expose the story no palace press release ever mentioned. For years, the world believed it was a story too perfect to question. A prince weary of protocol. An actress searching for meaning beyond the screen. Two people, oceans apart, somehow colliding under the spell of fate. That's the narrative the press packaged and sold. The modern romance that promised to heal the monarchy's wounds. The palace smiled. The headlines swooned. And every frame, every photo, every soft focus interview painted Meghan as the symbol of change. The woman who made the world believe in love again.
Harry, being a simple soul, has easily changed to suit Meghan's agenda.
But behind the glowing portraits and the magazine covers, the timeline was already shifting. The blind date arranged by a mutual friend, that friend wasn't random. She was a long-standing member of Soho House London, the same network that had been quietly orbiting Meghan's life for years. The press never mentioned that Meghan had already been attending exclusive Soho gatherings in Toronto, events reserved reserved for high-ranking members, not television regulars. Or that Marcus Anderson, the man who managed those guest lists, was sitting at the very table where her introduction to Harry would be planned.
That she arrived in London, full career, single girl, wasn't interested. Of course, she'd been coming to London since 2013, hunting for a man to marry. She wanted an Englishman. She was on a man hunt.
Every coincidence had a footprint, every encounter a host. To the public, it was chemistry. To those inside the circuit, it looked more like choreography. Even the first photos of them together, the crisp park strolls, the hidden weekends in Botswana, followed a media rhythm too polished to be unplanned. Someone was curating the image long before the cameras arrived, and as the world cheered the royal engagement, few noticed how seamlessly Meghan's old social circle had merged with Harry's own. Different worlds, same faces. Because the fairy tale wasn't written by destiny, it was directed by design.
You know, this is what Meghan has been doing. She's a piece of Klingon, you know, like she clings to somebody who can get her there. So Meghan manages to befriend one person of a very popular group, and then that person introduces her to the others, and because that she's being brought in by somebody they trust, she's welcomed in.
And the script was only beginning to unravel. It started with one discovery, but it didn't end there. Once Harry began digging, the connections multiplied faster than he could make sense of them. There were names he'd heard before, socialites, donors, even business partners who'd quietly supported his charities. But now those same names appeared beside Meghan in photographs from years earlier. Different events, different continents, the same faces. And the deeper he looked, the more precise it became. Archived guest lists showed Meghan at Soho House, Istanbul, Madrid, and Barcelona between 2014 and 2016, mingling with financiers, diplomats, and heirs who would later appear in Harry's orbit. It wasn't random proximity, it was overlap. He found old blog entries from society writers describing Marcus Anderson's exclusive gatherings, curated nights meant to pair potential.
Meghan Markle did know Prince Andrew, and she knew Sarah incredibly well, which makes Zara a liar, because she says, I didn't know Meghan Markle until she invited me to her wedding. That is BS.
Women invited for their ambition, men for their influence. Every introduction, a calculated move within a larger design. Harry realized he hadn't been the first royal figure Marcus had courted, and Meghan hadn't been the first actress to pass through those circles either. But she was the one who learned how to stay. Then came the financial inconsistencies. Soho House memberships, international flights, private villas, none of it aligned with her acting salary. Invoices hinted that her expenses were covered by corporate partnerships, not personal accounts. In plain words, someone else was footing the bill. When Harry confronted old acquaintances, they avoided his calls. One even warned him, don't dig too deep, that world protects its own. That's when the truth began to fracture the fairy tale, because every revelation pushed him closer to one terrifying realization.
They were not poor. They just wanted to land a rich man and make easy money. And the worst part of it all is that Meghan Markle was already with Trevor Engelson there. She was already living with him. There was no need for her to be hustling this way.
The life he thought was built on love might have been assembled from strategy. And if the timeline was wrong, what else had been rewritten? By the time Harry traced the final thread, the pattern was undeniable. Every introduction, every photograph, every chance encounter that led to their union, all pointed toward one figure quietly operating in the background, Marcus Anderson. To the public, he was charming and discreet, a hospitality consultant for an exclusive network. But to those who'd been part of his private gatherings, Marcus was more than a host. He was a matchmaker of influence, a curator of access, and Meghan had been one of his most polished proteges.
Because I believe Jessica Mulroney was a member, along with her husband, of Soho House, not Meghan.
Society insiders described his circle as a finishing school for the ambitious women introduced to the right rooms, coached on appearance, demeanor, and conversation until they could navigate the world of the powerful effortlessly. Harry wasn't just another name in Meghan's story. He was the apex of her ascent. The evidence grew darker when Harry reviewed the wedding guest list. Nearly half the attendees from Meghan's side were linked to Marcus's network. Brand executives, club directors, and social players who had nothing to do with her Hollywood years. The ceremony that millions watched as a royal love story looked, in hindsight, like a carefully staged summit.
So this is way back in 2006. I wonder if Trevor ever knew about this. People can have double lives, because look at these pictures could not be shown in the United States, all over North America, only in certain countries. And I don't think Trevor would even thought back then of going through a VPN and seeing where Meghan Markle is or what she's doing.
Then came the memory that haunted him most, the old voicemail from William, a warning wrapped in concern. Be careful, you're not marrying into a romance, you're marrying into a strategy. He dismissed it as jealousy then. He doesn't anymore, because as Harry replayed the messages, scrolled through the faces, and counted the coincidences, the illusion finally collapsed. Every detail of his relationship now felt choreographed, from introductions to image management, from whispers to wedding bells. And when he looked at the woman beside him, he no longer saw destiny, he saw design. Because in this story, the prince didn't rescue the actress. The actress rewrote the fairy tale and cast herself as its queen. Once the facade cracked, there was no unseeing it. The cheerful interviews, the matching smiles, the polished charity appearances, they all started to look like choreography from a script he never read.
And that ridiculous story about how they first met. The whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Inside their private life, Harry began noticing the small shifts first. Conversations that once felt spontaneous now seemed rehearsed. Meetings he didn't know about. Names mentioned in passing that later appeared in press leaks. Word for word, every move he made, every statement he gave, felt guided, softened, reframed, and filtered through Meghan's growing team of advisors, many of them former Soho House affiliates. What was once love became managed. When palace aides described her as savvy, they meant strategic. When journalists called her independent, insiders whispered calculating. And when Meghan claimed to be breaking free from royal control, she was quietly building her own empire. One brand deal, one documentary, one image contract at a time. Harry, once the world's most untouchable royal, now felt like the accessory in his own story. He wasn't the headline anymore, he was the supporting character in hers. Even his memoir, insiders say, bore traces of ghostwriters with connections back to her media circle. The voice sounded like his, the framing suspiciously not. And through it all, Marcus Anderson remained close. A shadow advisor, spotted at private events, credited for media introductions and networking oversight. The same name, the same pattern.
Meghan Markle only becomes prominent for Soho House, guys, after she starts being on Suits and she's introduced to Marcus Anderson. And then she gets more consistent and more prominent work, okay? Because then she could be in the presence of Marcus Anderson.
By the time Harry realized how much control had shifted, it was already complete. Meghan had mastered the one skill no royal training ever covered: narrative ownership. She didn't just escape the institution, she replaced it. And the prince who once rebelled against the crown now found himself serving another, quieter, sharper, and infinitely more powerful. Because sometimes the throne isn't made of gold, it's made of influence. And Meghan sits on hers without ever needing a crown. When the royal gates finally closed behind them, many believed Meghan and Harry were walking into peace, freedom, silence, a chance to live without cameras or control. But the silence never came, because Meghan understood one truth better than anyone else. In a world built on image, the person who controls the narrative controls everything.
We're being brainwashed by these Hollywood people who think this is the way to make money and, in the end, destroy our monarchy to make their fortune.
Almost overnight, her team expanded. New PR firms, Hollywood strategists, image consultants who had never worked within royal walls but knew how to craft celebrity monarchy. The documentaries, the interviews, the tell-all projects, they weren't confessions, they were campaigns. Every production was meticulously timed. A royal controversy here, a personal revelation there. Each release countering headlines she didn't control. When criticism rose, a sympathetic profile followed. When questions surfaced, a rebrand appeared. Insiders close to Netflix executives later admitted that early drafts of their series were heavily rewritten after Meghan's review sessions. Scenes softened, quotes reshaped. The story wasn't just told, it was engineered. And through all of it, one thread remained constant. The same communications advisors connected to her Soho House circle. The same Marcus Anderson contacts quietly consulting from behind the curtain, ensuring every story echoed one message: Meghan the victim, Meghan the visionary, Meghan the voice of change.
Her guest list to her wedding showed her real ambition was to be a star in California.
Even Harry's public tone began to shift, from outrage to apology, from independence to echo. He was no longer telling his story, he was defending hers. Media experts now call it narrative inversion, a masterclass in flipping perception. Turn scrutiny into sympathy, turn ambition into activism, turn strategy into survival. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, one fact became clear: Meghan hadn't escaped the monarchy's media machinery. She'd rebuilt it, with herself at the center. And in that world, truth isn't exposed, it's edited, frame by frame, until only one version remains, hers. Maybe it was always meant to end this way, not with a crown, but with control. Not in a palace, but in a narrative. Because when you trace every thread, from the yacht photo to the orchestrated introductions, from the curated wedding guest list to the media empire that followed, the picture becomes something else entirely. Not a romance story, a recruitment story. Each connection, each friendship, each perfectly timed opportunity reveals the architecture of a life designed to ascend.
I truly believe that when he met Meghan, she whispered into his ear, a 36-year-old mature woman whispered into his ear, "Harry, you and I could change the world."
And at the center of it all, the woman the world thought it already knew. To her admirers, Meghan Markle is transformation incarnate, the girl who rose above cruelty and class to redefine what royalty means. To her critics, she's the embodiment of ambition polished into empathy, every word rehearsed, every tear placed. But to Harry, she's the unsolved equation that keeps him awake, the love that might have been real, and the manipulation that might have made it impossible to know. Because if the photographs, the connections, and the timelines all point to orchestration, what was ever authentic? Was it fate that brought her into his life, or a script she never admitted she was following? Maybe both, maybe neither. And that's the part that still haunts him. The world saw a fairy tale. Harry saw the mechanism behind it. And once you've seen the strings, you can never believe in magic again. Maybe the official story is true, maybe it isn't. But one thing is certain, it was never accidental. If you want to see how far this pattern really goes, watch our previous investigation where we uncovered Harry and Meghan exposed in NYC Awards, the shocking video of public fight. You're watching Star Spotlight, where the truth hides between the headlines.